Just as Elder Fang said that he wanted to see how long Xavier could withstand the pain of the heat, Xavier began to tremble. The older students that circled around him made a disappointed noise. Elder Fang looked disappointed as well. I suppose my expectations were too high. The young Miss Yu in her silver dress shook her head. Elder Fang, what do you mean by that? Xavier withstood the flame for 18 minutes. That is much more than most students in the inner circle could endure. Elder Fang waved his hand. I suppose you're right, Miss Yu. Now come out, Heavenly Flame. He twirled his fingers. However, instead of the translucent flames, a cluster of green flames appeared. Elder Fang's faint smile dropped as he saw the green flame. It bounced toward him. He swiftly waved his hand, and another flame appeared, forming a fire barrier. He waved his hand, and the fire barrier wrapped around the green flame. However, this did nothing to slow it down or stop it. Not even a half-second later, the flame was incinerated by the green heavenly flame. Elder Fang waved his hand again, and another fire barrier appeared. This time it was a lot stronger. In front of all the older students, the green heavenly flame crashed into it. A wild Q-energy explosion echoed through the Q training tower. It was so strong that the entire tower trembled as if an earthquake hit it. Yu formed a Q-energy shield around her, shielding off any debris flying at her and the students behind her. Once the trembling sound stopped, she let the shield disappear and looked around. Her jaw dropped. Smoke spread throughout the ancient tower. In the middle of it, she could see the silhouette of an old man who was panting heavily. It was Elder Fang. The scent of burnt hair and skin could be smelled around him. He was in a miserable state. The older students who shielded themselves from the fire and debris looked at him. They looked gloomy as they saw the old man in this state. They knew how harsh the requirements were to become an elder in the inner circle. Therefore, they knew how powerful Elder Fang was. If he would not be insanely powerful, he would not be an elder at the inner circle. There were no exceptions. Some of the older students swallowed heavily. None of them would manage to leave Elder Fang in such a bad state with one attack. Not to mention, an attack that happened by accident. Yet somehow, this student who just arrived at the inner circle managed to do exactly that. The sheer power of this attack terrified the older students. Somehow, Xavier fighting them during the fire energy hunting competition did not sound so unbelievable anymore. Elder Fang coughed. A cloud of ash came from his mouth. The older students were worried about how he would react. To their surprise, a wide grin spread over Elder Fang's face. What a terrifying power! No wonder the old deputy headmaster and the others were so secretive about the young man's ability. I can imagine that there are many elders who would like to rob this young student of this flame. The older students did not understand what sort of flame this green flame was. However, they could tell that the flame must be very special if even the elders of the inner circle were so interested in it. Elder Fang waved his hands and the smoke dispersed. Close to Elder Fang, footsteps were heard. The older students turned toward the source of the footsteps. Suddenly, they saw Xavier. In his left arm was Hao, who appeared to have passed out. Xavier frowned as he saw all the people staring at him. What? Did something happen? Elder Fang laughed. I suppose you could say so. You really are an outstanding talent. I haven't met any new student who did not pass out after being grilled by the heavenly flame of this tower. And who are you? Xavier asked. I am Elder Fang. I'm the elder of the first level of the Q training tower. Elder Fang laughed. Usually he was very stern and harsh to the new students. He did not want to spoil them. However, Xavier's power impressed him so much that he acted very differently toward Xavier than the other new students. I see. It's nice to meet you, Elder Fang. Can I ask what happened? Xavier slowly began to realize that he was the one to blame for Elder Fang's bad state. A feeling of guilt crawled into his heart. Elder Fang brushed it off. His eyes twitched. Well, it is nothing. Do not worry about me. I tried to remove the flame, and this green heavenly flame you possess thought I was a threat. I suppose it wanted to protect you in a way. Protect me? Xavier was surprised to hear that. He remembered the time Master Lao told him that he thinks the heavenly flames are conscious sometimes. Xavier now understood what Master Lao meant as he said this. What about my friend Hao? Will he be fine? Elder Fang nodded. I am sure he will be fine. He is just unconscious because the flame roasted him for too long. After a good night of rest, he will be as good as new. The flame roasted him? What do you mean? Xavier asked. Elder Fang chuckled. You are new here, so you still have a lot to learn. Let me explain everything. That is part of my duty as Elder of the Q Training Tower. He suddenly paused and turned to the older students who were still surrounding Xavier and the Elder. What are you idiots still doing here? Do none of you have any work to do? If you want to stay around and do nothing, I'll send you all to the kitchen so you can do the dishes instead of training in the tower. This was enough to startle the older students. Without missing a beat, they hurried deeper into the tower so they could continue their training. Xavier held back his laughter. The older students acted like obedient lambs in front of the Elder. Seeing this caused Xavier's respect for Elder Fang to grow. Elder Fang shook his head and let out a deep sigh. I'm sorry about that. They can act very bratty. If I'm not harsh with them, they'll walk all over me. I hope you understand. Anyway, please follow me. I will introduce you to someone. Elder Fang took a few steps forward and gently touched the arm of the young woman in silver, making her turn around. Elder Fang looked at Xavier. Xavier, this is Miss Yu. She has been here for more than 3 years. Her strength is outstanding. Not many students in the academy dare to provoke her. Additionally, she is the founder of the Moon Spirit faction within the inner circle. Xavier was impressed. He nodded and stretched out his hand. My name's Xavier. It's nice to meet you, Yu. Elder Fang raised an eyebrow. He knew that Miss Yu had an obsession with cleanliness, to such an extent that she did not like to touch anyone. Even while fighting with others, she would wrap herself up with tight Q energy so that she could avoid direct touch. When she arrived at the inner circle, some older students teased her about this, although this did not last long. Once she demonstrated her strength, the teasing stopped. Elder Fang was about to mention something as Yu stretched out her hand and took Xavier's. Elder Fang was surprised. Miss Yu did her best to swallow down her disgust. She was impressed after hearing all these things about him and seeing his green heavenly flame. Although she did not feel comfortable taking anyone's hand, she knew being rude to Xavier would be a bad move. It is nice to meet you, Xavier. My name is Yu, she greeted. Elder Fang was surprised. Oh my, I think you're the first student in the inner circle who gets to hold Miss Yu's hand. Yu turned red and pulled her hand back, crossing her arms in front of her chest. Xavier let out a forced awkward laugh. I'm honored. I am honored as well. I've heard a lot about you and the other new students you've led into battle against the older ones. Something like this has never happened before. You and your new students have really stolen the limelight, Yu praised. Xavier rubbed the back of his head. A red blush flashed over his face for a moment. If I would have known that it was such a big deal, I probably wouldn't have done it. Some people got really upset about it. Yu quickly understood. The older students are bothering you because of this? Xavier, if you would like additional protection, you can join my faction if you want to. I'm the founder and leader of the Moon Spirit faction. We would gladly have someone like you on our team. Xavier paused for a moment. He was not sure how to reject her offer without sounding rude. Look, Yu, I'm flattered, but I'm afraid I can't join. What? Why not? Yu was confused. Xavier hesitated. I kind of already formed a faction. It's called the Steel Gate faction. It's still a work in progress, though. I formed it with all the other new students. They all needed support. Fighting on your own in the inner circle is really hard. We already realized that on the second day here. Yu looked a bit worried as she heard this. Xavier, you said you formed your own faction with all the new students? That will cause you a lot of trouble. More trouble? Are you serious? Why? Xavier let out an annoyed groan. He really was not in the mood for more trouble. You see, the new students who enter the inner circle after the qualification competition make up the majority of new people. Sure, every now and then someone enters the inner circle because they get recruited by an elder, or because of some other connections, but they're very rare and hard to come by. This means that the new students who enter the qualification competition make up about 70% of new students a year. All the older students are eager to recruit them for their own factions. They do so to make their factions grow in numbers and strength. This has been so for generations. However, Now that you have created your own faction with all the new students, the other factions are unable to get new recruits. They'll be very offended by this action." Xavier took a glance at Elder Fang next to you. He nodded as she spoke. So it must have been true what she said. Xavier's shoulders sank. His expression became a lot more serious. "Why does this keep happening? I want to fix one thing and end up with 3 more problems than I started with. This is really getting out of hand. If I'd been familiar with the structure and hierarchy of the inner circle, I wouldn't have bothered with any of this. I would have ignored the older and the new students, made my way to the inner circle, and called it a day instead of picking fights. Man, I really wish someone would have told me what sort of mess I would get myself into. But I guess that can't be helped now. All I can do is deal with the consequences on my own. I'm not a kid anymore. I can't run away or cry for help." Eventually, Xavier let out a sigh. "I was really too reckless. I had no idea my actions would cause so much drama. I'm afraid my faction won't be strong enough to deal with every other faction at the academy. I'll take one step after the other and hope things will work out." Yu was quiet for a moment. She was not sure what else to add. "Look, Xavier, if there's anything you need help with in the future, let me know. I've seen your potential, and I don't want to have you as an enemy." Xavier took a small bow in front of her. "Thank you, I appreciate it, Yu. I'm glad about any support I can get." "Don't get too happy about this, Xavier. I'm afraid there's not much I can do, and I'm only offering this because of your potential. Don't get any wrong idea," warned Yu. Xavier nodded. "I know. I'm not naive enough to think you're offering this because you like me. I know how this world works. Neither you nor Elder Fang would be so helpful to me if I would be any ordinary new student, right?" He laughed. Although Xavier's bluntness caught Yu and Elder Fang off guard, they both were understanding. They knew that there was no point in beating around the bush anymore. Yu took a small bow toward Xavier. "Very well. Since no one wants to waste any more time, we should continue. Elder Fang will show you around the tower. I need to get back to training. I'm sure we can chat later. See you around." Yu turned around and walked deeper into the tower. "Quite an impressive girl, isn't she? I'm sure she can be a powerful ally." Elder Fang smiled at Xavier. Xavier agreed. "I think so too. Anyway, you wanted to show me the Q training tower and explain." The Q training tower was reaching a lot deeper underground than Xavier expected. The tower was an enormous structure that seemingly did not end. Elder Fang led him further and further down. He showed Xavier various training rooms of different sizes that were created within the round building. Most of them were occupied with students. The training rooms had doors in front of them, on which were tags. Xavier took a look at the tags. High, middle, low. Those must be the different levels that the areas are divided in that Taro mentioned, he thought. Xavier continued to follow Elder Fang. It seemed that all the high-level training rooms were close to the middle of the tower. Around them were the middle-level training areas, and closer to the outside walls of the tower were the lower levels. Elder Fang pointed at one of the high-level training areas. "The most powerful students usually get the high-level training areas. It will improve their training conditions. Those who are weaker will have to settle for the low-level training area, but the cost is the same. For example, on the first floor, it costs 1 day's worth of fire energy to get access to the low-level training area, and it costs 1 day's worth of fire energy to access the high-level training area. While the fee is the same, the results are worlds apart." Xavier raised a doubtful eyebrow. "But won't this lead to the stronger becoming stronger, and those who are weak will struggle to catch up? They don't have much of a chance, do they?" Elder Fang shrugged. He did not seem to care. "Without struggle, they won't unleash their full potential. It is in everyone's best interest to keep it this way. So far, it has not caused any trouble. And usually, the weaker students find a way around to get stronger by other means. If they are smart, that is." Xavier nodded, but did not say anything. He walked closer to the middle of the tower. Suddenly, he stopped. In front of him was a wide, bottomless black pit. "What is this?" Xavier's skin crawled. Not the slightest bit of light came from the hole. It was impossible to make out the bottom. A feeling of anxiety spread through Xavier's body. He took a step back. "It feels as if there's something lurking at the bottom of this pit. I can't explain it. The feeling is strange." Xavier stretched his hand out, and something within his body leaped. He cleared his throat. A while later, the green heavenly flame in his body fluctuated, causing a flash of green light to appear in Xavier's eyes. For some reason, the bottomless pit seemed to turn darker. His hair stood on ends. A strong heat came from the bottom of the pit. The heat grew stronger and stronger. Suddenly, a translucent spiral moved upward like a python. Xavier could sense that it was coming closer to him. It was only a few feet away. "Xavier, step aside!" Elder Fang's shriveled hand pulled on Xavier's arm and dragged him back a few feet. Xavier felt another flood of heat. The temperature in the tower rose by several degrees. His face turned pale. A hissing sound echoed through the tower. An ancient energy suddenly erupted from the hole. The air above the hole looked distorted. To the naked eye, one could not see anything but the distorted air. One could also hear the hissing sound. Elder Fang tensed up. He dragged Xavier further back. Although Elder Fang did not know what exactly was happening right now, he was able to make a few guesses. He had been an elder for many years, so he knew many secrets that the students did not. Xavier, unlike anyone else, had the help of the green heavenly flame. While the green flame flashed through his eyes, he was able to see what sort of beast came leaping upwards from the hole. To Xavier's shock, the invisible beast was a fire snake. It was at least 6 feet thick. Xavier raised his head and wanted to estimate its length, but it was impossible to tell. From its eyes, waves of hot Q energy came forth. The snake looked as if it was made of translucent fire. Xavier did not doubt that if he touched it, he would incinerate into nothing within a second. The fire snake let out a deep roar as it shot its massive body upwards. Xavier could sense that around the black hole appeared to be an invisible barrier. He could only tell because of the distorted air around the pit. The fire snake hit the barrier and let out an annoyed hiss. There was not even a scratch on the barrier. Realizing that it was hopeless to attempt to break free, the fire snake grew angry. It spat out translucent flames from its mouth and nostrils, but they did nothing to break the invisible cage it was trapped in. The frustrated giant snake had to withdraw back into the dark pit where it came from. As the fire snake disappeared, the fluctuating air grew less and less, until the Q energy barrier surrounding the pit turned back into its completely invisible state. The green light in Xavier's eyes disappeared. He turned to Elder Fang. "Elder Fang, what the hell was that? Was that a fire snake? Why is it here? Don't tell me this monster just lives here and no one is concerned about that." Elder Fang lowered his voice as he talked to Xavier. "Do not tell anyone about what you saw today. Students are usually prohibited from coming so close to the center of the tower. I shouldn't have brought you here. I was very reckless. Luckily, none of the other elders were here to see this. Otherwise, I would be in deep trouble." Xavier raised his hands and winked. "Don't worry, Elder Fang. I didn't see anything. I just noticed that there was some hot energy and some noise. Nothing more." Elder Fang looked relieved. "Thank you, Xavier. You're really saving my skin here. We should go before anyone sees us." Xavier agreed and followed Elder Fang close behind. On his way to the exit, he took one final look at the bottomless pit in the middle of the tower. Not a single noise could be heard. It was eerily silent. Weird, that energy coming from that beast was too strong. Still, it didn't leave a scratch on the barrier surrounding the hole. That only makes it scarier. Who created the barrier around the hole? I can't even imagine what sort of power went into creating it. After exiting this area of the tower, Elder Fang calmed down. He brought Xavier around the first level of the tower. He kept talking about rules, safety guidelines, and other small facts about the tower. While talking like this, he sounded like an ordinary tour guide. Xavier could not focus on many of the things he said. In his mind, he was still thinking about the giant invisible snake they had encountered earlier. It was too unsettling to just forget about it. "Hello, Elder Fang." Some older students walked past the elder and took a respectful bow. They then turned toward Xavier. "Who is this?" "This? Oh, this is the young man who defeated the older students in the fire energy hunting competition. Xavier. I am sure you all have heard about him." Elder Fang chuckled and patted Xavier's back, leaving the other students flabbergasted. None of them had seen Elder Fang talk so casually to a new student. They all knew him as someone that was very stern and strict. Seeing him so friendly and open caught them off guard. Some of the students, who were afraid of Elder Fang, gave Xavier a look full of awe. Only some of the most powerful older students were treated this politely by Elder Fang. Although they did not tell Xavier why they looked at him in the way they did, Xavier was able to take a guess. They said goodbye to the Elder and Xavier and walked away while whispering and gossiping. Elder Fang suddenly turned toward Xavier and smiled. "Young man, you have mentioned that you just formed a faction called the Steelgate Faction. Let me offer you some advice. If you train in the Q training tower with a group, don't attempt to snatch the high-level training areas." Xavier nodded. "I think I understand. I already have enough enemies and don't need to make things worse for myself and my faction by picking fights, right? Additionally, I have no chance with my current group to fight any of the more powerful students. There are a lot of older students who are more powerful than the ones we have fought during the fire energy hunting competition. Me and a bunch of true masters don't have any good chances against all these battle spirits." Exactly. Maybe I should also tell you that we have a rule in the Q training tower that says the elders are not allowed to interfere in any fight between the students in the training rooms. As long as no one dies, we are not allowed to interfere. But I'm sure you will be fine. Try to keep training. Once someone in your faction rises up to the level of a battle spirit, your faction will be qualified to become a second-tier faction of the Inner Circle. Then you can pick fights for the high-level training rooms. Elder Fang laughed. Xavier did not feel like laughing. If we have one battle spirit, we would only be a second-tier rated faction? Then how powerful do we need to become a first-tier rated faction? It sounds like the highest-rated factions have at least a Q master. Oh, no, don't worry. Elder Fang shook his head and laughed. Goodness, that would be a bit much, even for our students. No, you see, the highest-rated factions have at least 3 or 4 battle spirits amongst them. Xavier sighed in relief. That's good to know. Thank you for your help. With Sunny, Hao, and Layla, I believe our Steel Gate faction has a good chance to rank that high in the future. Though I guess it would be best to keep a low profile for now. I have enough problems that I still need to take care of. As Xavier said this, he and the Elder were getting closer to the entrance of the Q training tower. Xavier saw Hao, who woke up from his unconscious state. Elder Fang, thank you for showing me around, but I think we should stop here for today. I'd like to continue chatting with you in the future, once I have more time. Elder Fang seemed a bit disappointed. I understand that you must be busy. Will you spend some time training in the tower before you continue to do whatever it is that you're doing? Xavier thought for a moment, but then looked over to Hal and shook his head. I'm afraid I don't have any time for this today. I've already spent a lot of time at the tower. I should head back and help Sunny and Layla with the faction. Hal stepped forward on trembling legs. I'm happy you finally decided to be more responsible, Xavier. His face was pale. He looked as if he was about to pass out again. Elder Fang sighed, but did not complain about Xavier's decision. I understand. Forming a new faction requires a lot of hard work. You're going to be very busy over the next few weeks. The next time you come back to the tower with some of your new students, look for me. I will help you to find the best place amongst the middle-level training rooms. Not all of the training rooms in the middle level are equal. Some of them are better than others, and can even compare to the higher-level training rooms. Xavier furrowed his brows. Are you saying there are differences between the rooms of the same level? This keeps getting more and more complicated. So to summarize, the deeper underground, the better training results. The closer to the middle, the better the training results. And now the better the room, the better the results? These are an awful lot of things that someone has to keep in mind when training here. Elder Fang shrugged. I understand that all of this is overwhelming for a new student. Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. So far, everyone has. Sometimes it takes a while, but at some point, it'll come naturally to you. I promise you'll be fine. Xavier nodded. He thanked Elder Fang for his help and bid him farewell. Once more, Xavier supported Hao to walk as they made their way out of the Q training tower. Elder Fang kept watching the two young men until they disappeared in the distance. He fondled his beard as if he was lost in thought. A heavenly flame? How unexpected. Our entire inner circle is built up on a heavenly flame, and this young man has one of these powerful flames all to himself. How lucky. Even I can't help it and feel jealous. Xavier stopped for a brief moment once he exited the Q training tower. He turned around and raised his head to take one final look at the tower. There was something very intriguing about the ancient tower. Suddenly, Lau's voice echoed through Xavier's mind. Huh, how unexpected. It actually obtained a fire spirit. It developed emotions and intellect. No wonder the inner circle is so secretive about this tower. They even created a space lock to keep it trapped. This space lock could only be broken by someone at the peak of the level of a war king. And this only if he would use all his strength. Xavier forgot to breathe for a moment. He continued to walk away. In his mind, he asked Lau what he meant by obtained a fire spirit. Lau did not hesitate with his answer. A fire spirit is an alternate form of life. It is created with the power of fire. They can develop a conscience that is similar to the one of a high-level monster. You should not underestimate them. This fire spirit in particular, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this fire spirit appears to be the heavenly flame that we are looking for. I'm sorry, what? You gotta be kidding. You're telling me this giant fire snake is the fallen heart heavenly flame? Xavier could not believe what he had heard. Master Lau was silent for a moment. I'm sorry, Xavier. I'm afraid I'm not messing around. I know it's strange, but the heavenly flames are very unique from each other, so this is not too surprising. All the heavenly flames can take on unique forms after forming through centuries. Remember the green lotus heavenly flame? As the name suggested, it took on the form of a green lotus. Of course, this cannot be compared to the level of power and consciousness that the fallen heart flame took on. But I am sure you could feel it as well. Could you sense the intellect of the giant beast? Xavier thought for a moment, and then silently replied, Yes, I could. It was really disturbing. I could also sense that it was furious. It really wanted to escape this space lock that someone had created around it. Must be very depressing to be stuck inside a hole for who knows how long. But how are we going to proceed with this? It's not like we can refine this fire spirit so that I can swallow it, right? Even if we would get near to it, there's no way of absorbing it. Master Lau seemed unhappy. Don't give up already, Xavier. And don't say that there's no way. There's always a way. And if you can't find one, then you have to make one. However, I won't deny that this will be very difficult. Perhaps it'll be even too difficult for you right now. You do know that there are more heavenly flames we could search for before finding a way to obtain this one, right? Xavier was unsure if he wanted to laugh or cry. Master Lau, are you messing around? We both know how rare these heavenly flames are. It could take us a century to find another one. Now we have one right in front of us, and we're supposed to search for another one? I think we should worry about this later. I'm sorry, Xavier, but we need to think this through and wait for a while. I don't want to make a rash decision. It could cause a lot more problems than you can imagine. Oh, and before I forget, there's something else I could sense while being in the tower that gave me a headache. There were various sources of powerful Q energies a few levels deeper in the tower. There are as many powerful people as grains of sand in a desert in this academy. It's really unnerving. I believe these Q energies must have belonged to some extremely powerful people, but I could not tell you how powerful exactly. However, I can tell you that even I would struggle in a fight against them, at least as long as I am still trapped in the spirit form. Anyway, I can confirm that the reason the students in the inner circle are able to speed up their training so quickly is because of the fallen heart heavenly flame. They sealed the spirit of the heavenly flame with the tower, which enables them to basically milk it. The closer someone is to the spirit of the heavenly flame, the faster their Q energy will be refined and grow stronger. Lau explained. Xavier's jaw dropped. He wanted to scream, yet all he could do was bite his tongue and swallow down his frustration. They're milking the heavenly flame to level up? I can't believe this. That's terrifying. This also explains why there was a spark that split off from the body. Do you remember that spark? It entered my body as I walked inside the tower earlier. These splits are basically the milk they obtained from milking the heavenly flame. The deeper you can go, the more of these sparks there are, and the faster you can level up. It all finally makes sense, but... Xavier's hands trembled. He clenched them so tightly into fists that his knuckles turned white. This is really disturbing. Who would come up with something like this? And how powerful are they? Not even I would think of milking a heavenly flame. It sounds insane, he added. Lau snorted coldly. That's because it is insane. No one should do such a thing. They're playing with fire, and will end up getting burnt. Most likely in a very literal sense. It's not worth the risk, Xavier. I guarantee you. Xavier raised his eyebrows. He thought for a moment. You're implying that the heavenly flame is not sealed away safe enough? I don't know. The space lock barrier seemed very sturdy. It said that even a strong war king would struggle to break through this barrier without using all of his strength. Lau's laughter rang through Xavier's mind. Of course they would say that. What else would they say? Oh, there's a giant monster fueled by a heavenly flame in the basement that could break free at any moment and destroy everything. That would raise too many concerns, even in an academy that specializes in fighting, like Nanji Academy. By sealing this heavenly flame in this tower, the inner circle is basically building a barrier on the top of a volcano. Do you think this is a good idea? It's reckless at best, and completely suicidal at worst. I don't even want to think about the level of destruction this thing will cause once it explodes. However, maybe we could use this to our advantage. That way, we can level your flame mantra Q method up, and save the inner circle from being blown into bits and pieces. After he said this, Lau turned silent for a bit, as he considered their options for a minute. Xavier decided to interrupt his master after 2 minutes of tense silence. Master Lau, are you implying we should wait until the heavenly flame erupts, and then I can devour it? How would this work, and how long will it take until it erupts? We can't stay here for a century to wait for it to erupt, can we? I don't believe we have to wait for too long. Remember how the heavenly flame in the form of the fire snake acted earlier? It was furious. You said it yourself. This beast is sick and tired of being locked away, and its energy keeps getting stronger and stronger without any outlet. I can't imagine this taking longer than 2 years. Perhaps it will erupt in 1 year already, Lau uttered. Xavier was silent. This was more than bad news. He glanced at Hao. Hao's head was bobbing up and down as if he was still not fully conscious. It would most likely take another day until he was fit again. Master Lau, what am I supposed to do? Xavier questioned. There isn't much you can do, Xavier. Make sure you take as much time as possible to train within the Q training tower. You need to level up as quickly as you can. Ideally, you should become a battle spirit in the next 6 months. Once you are a battle spirit, you won't run into many people that pose a threat in the inner circle. With the help of the green heavenly flame and your D techniques, it should be easy for you to move around without getting stopped. And if you are in a life or death scenario, you can merge the purple flame and the green lotus heavenly flame again. With this attack, not even the elders would have the courage to face you. But please don't merge my bone-chilling white heavenly flame with your green lotus heavenly flame again. It does have incredible strength, but it's not worth it. The backlash would be too much. Keep in mind, we need to be quick. You can't afford to knock yourself out for a few weeks, or drain me of all my spiritual strength again. Remember how long it took to recover the last time you merged the 2 heavenly flames? We were several weeks behind our schedule because of it. But enough of that. Make sure to also practice your D techniques during the next 6 months, especially the agility D technique you obtained in the Black Zone. When you run into a high-level Q master, you need to know how to flee. Understood? Lau explained. Xavier was a bit overwhelmed by the flood of words. He could feel a headache growing. It took him a while to process all of this and nod. Understood. Can I ask you something while you're still around? I'm still missing some ingredients for the Earth Spirit Pill that we need to refine before swallowing the Heavenly Flame. How am I supposed to get those ingredients? Lau was surprised. He had to think for a moment before he replied. That is a good point. I did not consider this. It's going to be difficult to obtain all of them. They are all very rare. Xavier huffed. Of course they are. The universe really does not want me to catch a break. Catch a break? Xavier, what are you talking about? Is it because of the faction? Hao, who was still supported by Xavier, slowly recovered his senses. He straightened up and stretched himself. Xavier let go of him. It's good to see you're doing better, Hao. The elder did mention that you might need a night of sleep so you can fully recover. We should head back to our home and see how Sunny and Layla are doing, Xavier suggested. Hao and Xavier kept walking for almost an hour. As they were getting closer to their house, someone came rushing over. Chief Xavier! Chief Xavier! A new student stopped before Xavier. He was panting heavily and drenched in cold sweat. We need your help. Something awful has happened. We don't know what to do. Someone is trying to pull the other new students away. They want to force us to join their factions, and if we don't agree, then... Calm down. Take a breath. Who's forcing you to join their factions? Xavier's face turned dark. The new student struggled to catch his breath. He kept panting. Sweat was running over his face. He raised his head. Anger flashed through the student's eyes. His lips were trembling. I'm sure you know who. Xavier was shocked, but not surprised. He knew who the new student was talking about. Xavier gritted his teeth. It's that traitor, Ty. The new student hurriedly nodded and gasped for air. You need to come and help us, Xavier. Please, they're too strong for us. Xavier agreed. He and Hal followed the new student to their residence. A large crowd had formed between the houses. Amongst this crowd were two groups of people facing each other. The smaller group was the one consisting of the older students. Although they were outnumbered by the new students, they appeared to have the upper hand. Meanwhile, the new students were aware that they had not much of a chance. Their strongest warriors were Sunny and Layla, who stood at the very front. Ty, who was leading the small group of the older students, was unimpressed. He had a smug smile on his face. Sunny, Layla, don't be stupid. I already told you that this Steel Gate faction of yours won't make it far in the Inner Academy. You see, we need these new students for the established factions in the Inner Circle. We need more members. How else are our factions supposed to grow? Be reasonable and join an existing faction that can get you somewhere. Many of the factions in the Inner Circle have battle spirits and all sorts of other powerful people. Sunny glared at him. I'm close to becoming a battle spirit myself. Why would I care if the other factions have battle spirits? You think I'm a coward like you who needs to hide behind someone stronger? This comment caught Ty off guard. His smug smile dropped. One of the older students from behind him laughed and put a hand on Ty's shoulder. Don't waste your time with this arrogant, dumb girl. Attack them directly. It'll humble them. Maybe once we put them into place, we can spend some time with them. The young man looked over Sunny and Layla with desire in his eyes. Sunny's expression grew dark. Leave, all of you. None of you have any right to be here. Miss Sunny, Xavier might be strong enough to defeat the older students during the fire energy hunting competition, but the competition is over. Now you're in the Inner Circle. You're delusional if you think he and these other useless idiots stand a chance against us. After all, we have 3 battle spirits, myself included. You don't think he has a chance against me, do you? The young man took a step closer to Sunny. He can defeat you. I know he can. We won't be afraid of a bunch of disgusting bullies who think they can do whatever they want. Sunny did not step back as the man came closer. Seeing her courage, the desire on the older students' faces grew. What a stubborn little girl. I like it. How about a deal? If you hand me over 5 of the new students, me and my white gang won't show up again to cause any trouble in the future. Are you agreeable? Ty furrowed his brows. Fen, that won't be enough, don't you think? The older student named Fen waved his hand to make Ty shut up. It will be if Miss Sunny is one of those 5 students. Ty's shoulders sank. He saw the desire on Fen's face, and it caused a wave of anger to overcome him. Since Fen stared at Sunny, he could not see the anger grow on Ty's face. Sunny, of course, knew of Fen's intentions. She crossed her arms in front of her chest. Our faction is not going to hand you any member. They're not cattle that can be used to bargain. Fen rolled his eyes. All right then, have it your way. If you want to pretend to be so noble, if you don't hand over the students freely, we'll take them with force. Finally, I was getting bored. Layla chimed in and stored her Q energy. Her Q energy could be felt through the entire crowd and beyond. Numerous leaves on the ground flew into the air. The new students saw this and also surged their Q energy. Their Q energy was not as powerful, but strong enough to cause the older students to take a step back. Fen snorted. He smiled at them mockingly. They really are arrogant. I've heard rumors, but I wasn't sure if they were true. But now I get it. What a bunch of arrogant bastards. Blue Q energy wrapped around his body. It looked like seawater as it rolled over his body. Fen's Q energy was many times stronger than anyone else's Q energy among the students present. Today, I want to show you the difference between the older students and the new ones. Ty, let's show these new students that they have no idea what true strength looks like. Ty kept up his tough facade. At some point, he glanced over to Sunny, and a flash of guilt could be seen on his face. The 10 older students rushed toward the new ones. Layla shook her hand, and a long green whip appeared. She swung it through the air. I'll block Ty. Sunny, I want you to lead the others and block the other older students. Sunny nodded. Her eyes were cold as she looked at the older students rushing over. A bright golden glow appeared on her hands. She braced herself for the attack. Just as the fight was about to begin, Xavier rushed through the air like a black shadow. He smashed the broadsword ruler down. Dust flew up into the sky. Fen frowned. He waved his hands, and the dust fell to the ground. As the dust settled, he saw the broadsword ruler sticking in the ground. The sun glimmered on its black surface. The older students suddenly stopped. Ty began to sweat as he saw it. How, Xavier? I thought the two of you ran away. It's surprising that you both show up after all. Xavier landed heavily behind the broadsword ruler. He did not reply. The new students cheered as they saw him. He was the backbone of their faction. They knew that as long as Xavier was around, they would be safe. Layla was relieved as she saw Hao and Xavier. I'm happy that the two of you are back. This is going to be tough. Xavier, they want to... Sunny spoke up, but Xavier raised his hand, making her stop. I know, they told me. Leave everything to me. There was not a hint of fear on Xavier's face. He turned toward Ty. Ty, I'm surprised you're brave enough to show your face after you ran away like a coward. Ty gritted his teeth. His face turned red with anger. Keep acting like that, and I'll make sure someone beats some sense into you. I told you. Someone will beat some sense into me, and I guess that someone is not going to be you, is it, you coward? Xavier laughed. Everyone stop arguing. I'm getting tired of this. Fen walked forward and stepped between Ty and Xavier. So you are Xavier. I've heard a lot about you. Hand over 15 students, and we will leave you and your pretty friends alone. Fen surged more of his Q energy. Xavier was unimpressed. And if we won't? Then I will beat you up in front of all the new students, so they can see how weak you really are. Fen grinned, showing all his teeth. Fen, you shouldn't do that. Xavier has some powerful tricks up his sleeve. When he uses them, he can easily fight a battle spirit. During the fire energy hunting competition, he defeated Shiro. Ty tried to warn Fen. Fen only laughed. He defeated Shiro. Am I supposed to be impressed? Shiro just became a battle spirit recently. Defeating him isn't worth mentioning. How about a one-on-one? Just you and me, and the others can enjoy the show instead of getting hurt. Fen did not look away from Xavier. Xavier clenched his fists tightly. His knuckles turned white. Suddenly, he could feel a soft hand on his fingers. Be careful, he's very strong. It was Sunny. She walked closer to Xavier. Worry was on her face. Xavier leaned closer to Sunny. He raised his hand and brushed over her soft, long hair. Don't worry, I'll destroy him. He won't bother us again. A warm smile spread over Sunny's cold face. She never doubted Xavier. As Fen saw this, his blood began to boil. Seeing how Xavier brushed over Sunny's hair only increased his anger. Ty felt very similar. He had feelings for Sunny since he met her at the academy. Never before did he see her smile at someone in such a warm way. And never before did Sunny allow anyone to touch her outside a fight. Xavier looked back at Fen and laughed. What? Are we going to start now? Or do you want to stand there and stare at me all day? You know I have better things to do than waste my time with trash like you. The older students stared at Xavier. They did not expect him to be so bold. Fen huffed. You have some guts. I'll give you that. All right. Today we'll see how strong the leader of these new students really is. How about we make things more interesting? If you defeat me, I'll leave you and your Steelgate faction alone for, let's say, 6 months. How does that sound? In the meanwhile, many students arrived to watch the upcoming fight. They took a few steps back as Fen's Q energy rose. They all were curious after hearing many stories about Xavier and how he led the new students against the old ones during the fire energy hunting competition. They wanted to see for themselves how strong Xavier was. I've heard that Fen became a level 3 battle spirit a month ago. This is going to be a tough fight for Xavier, uttered one of them. Yeah, but apparently Xavier has some mysterious flame that he can summon. It's hard to tell who's going to win this fight. If Xavier loses, though, it'll really be embarrassing for him, someone else pointed out. Right? Especially in front of Sunny. She keeps talking so highly of him. It would be a shame if he would embarrass himself after all of that boasting, added another student. Xavier ignored the conversations around the crowd. I agree to your challenge, and I'll take your word for it. He took a step forward and waved his hands, forming some seals. Suddenly, wisps of green Q energy came forth from his Q cyclone. They moved through his Q pathways and got faster and faster. Waves of wild energy spread out and surged from Xavier's body. Skyfire! Green energy wrapped around Xavier. The other students were shocked. They could feel how Xavier leveled up rapidly. Is he increasing his strength with some secret technique? No wonder he defeated Shiro. While most people were impressed, Fen only shook his head with disappointment. Xavier, this is all you got? You do realize this will only put you at a disadvantage. This secret technique won't help you for very long, and will only damage your body in the long run if you keep relying on it. Is this the best you can do? Xavier grabbed the broadsword ruler in front of him. Hao, keep an eye on the older students and Tai. Got it, Xavier. Leave them to me, but be careful. Fen is clearly more powerful than Shiro, Hao warned. I know. Xavier jumped off the ground and rushed toward Fen. At the same time, Fen waved his hand. Bright blue light flashed around him. A moment later, he had a blue trident in his hands that was about 6 feet long. It was glowing. The broadsword ruler clashed with the trident. Fen's body trembled. He was forced to take a step backward. Xavier had to take 2 steps back. Once again, Fen charged at Xavier. The blue and the green Q energy interweaved with each other. Layla stared at Xavier. To her left was Hao, and to her right was Sunny. Do you think Xavier can defeat Fen? Hao thought for a moment, but did not reply. Sunny did not have to think for a second before she nodded. Not bad. Looks like you're not just boasting for no reason. No wonder you're so arrogant. Fen swung the trident in his hand. After a few rounds against Xavier, he was panting heavily. Xavier was keeping his breathing slow and steady. He smashed the broadsword ruler into the ground. Crack lines appeared. Thanks to the secret Skyfire technique, he was now close to Fen's level. However, he knew it would not last long, so he had to be fast. Fen grinned sinisterly. The trident in his hand vibrated. Its glow grew brighter. Fen's face also turned into a strange blue color. I'm done playing around. I'll settle this with one blow. He rotated the trident, aiming it at Xavier. Fen jumped off the ground and, like a blue shadow, rushed forward to Xavier. Suddenly, the Q energy around the trident shot forward. It turned into a blue shark. This was truly the hallmark of a battle spirit. Only very powerful battle spirits could transform their Q energy into animate objects or animals. This sort of attack was undoubtedly terrifying when used in combat. Xavier could see through the energy shark. The trident was visible in its stomach. Xavier did not look away. It was coming closer and closer. He grabbed the broadsword ruler, waved his hands, and green Q energy wrapped around his weapon. He raised it high into the air and smashed it with all his might into the ground. The ground cracked. Intense heat surrounded Xavier and his weapon. The air around him was distorted. Xavier moved the broadsword ruler, and it blocked off the energy shark and the trident in it. The sound of an explosion echoed through the air. The blue energy shark fell apart, and the blue energy spread like a wave of water through the air. It turned into blue fog as it got too close to Xavier. The heat was too much for the Q energy with the water attribute. Fen stopped. The trident in his hand sank. His arms trembled. Xavier was only 2 feet in front of him. Fen tightened his grip around his trident. Xavier grinned. He opened his mouth. A loud roar came from Xavier's mouth. It echoed through the air like thunder. The students had to cover their ears. Many fell backward in surprise and shock. Throbbing pain shot through their heads. Their ears were tingling. Fen had no chance to cover his ears in time. Blood leaked from them. Fen was so shaken, he could not move. Xavier used this to his advantage and jumped next to him. With all his strength, he smashed his fist into Fen's face. Fen was sent flying through the air and landed a few dozen feet away on the hard ground. None of the students knew if he was still alive. Some looked worried. It was deadly silent. No one bothered to hide their shock. Defeating a level 3 battle spirit should not be so easy, especially not for a new student. Fight between Fen and Xavier did not even last 10 minutes. Moments later, loud coughing interrupted the silence. It came from Xavier. He dropped the broadsword ruler. His face was pale. Sonny ran toward Xavier, supporting him. Xavier, are you all right? Xavier coughed and nodded. It's fine, don't worry. Using the secret technique is taking a toll on me. I shouldn't do it too often. It increases my Q energy, but that also means that my Q pathways are getting damaged, since they're not used to so much Q energy flowing through my body. Xavier forced himself to stand up straight and placed a hand on Sonny's shoulder. He glanced at Fen, who was still lying on the ground. Xavier brushed over his storage ring, and a small bottle appeared. He opened it, and a small pill rolled into his hand. He quickly swallowed it and put the bottle back in his storage ring. If it weren't for the fact that he was an alchemist, Xavier would not use the secret technique at all. Its backlash was too much to deal with without any healing pills. The older student from Fen's white gang looked at Xavier with a new level of fear. Seeing how easily Xavier defeated Fen, they tensed up. None of them dared to let their guard down near him. Xavier laughed as he saw this. What? Do you want to fight me as well? Look, just take that useless leader of yours and leave. Ty gnashed his teeth. That idiot Fen thinks so highly of himself. He thinks no one could defeat him just because he's a level 3 battle spirit, and now he got defeated by some she master. Serves him right. If things continue this way, I'll have to get my older cousin involved to take care of Xavier's Steel Gate faction. Ty continued to curse Fen, who didn't listen to his warning earlier. He then turned around and walked away. A few members of Fen's white gang followed him quickly. 2 more members went to Fen and dragged his unconscious body away from the crowd. Once they disappeared, the tension in the atmosphere left as well. The new students could finally take a deep breath. This time, they did not cheer. They were too nervous, and a sense of urgency was amongst them. They had a feeling that this was not the end of it. If they wanted to face any of these older students in the future, they had to increase their strength, and quickly. Xavier clapped his hands. Everyone, the show's over. You all can go back. He threw a menacing glare at some of the older students who kept watching. They nodded and walked away, chatting and gossiping about what they had just seen. Sonny laughed. Xavier, if things like this continue, soon the entire inner circle will only talk about you and nothing else. Good. At least this way we can scare some of the factions who want to challenge us off. Hopefully, they'll leave us alone. Xavier sighed. Part of him knew that this would not be the case. Life in the inner circle was very turbulent. Xavier turned toward the new students behind him. I'm sure you all understand how important strength is. Without strength, we can only stand by and be bullied by those who stand in our way. If any of you would want to avoid situations like the one today, you need to become stronger. In this world, only the strong survive. From tomorrow on, every member of the Steelgate faction will start to train in the Q training tower. Hopefully, the victory over Fen will show those older students that we are not to be messed with. We need to become stronger as fast as possible. Once Fen recovers, he'll look for revenge. When he does, we need to be prepared. Some of the new students got upset. But didn't he say that he'll leave us alone for 6 months if you defeat him? Xavier let out a cold laugh. Yeah, he did say this. But are you sure you want to believe him? If he attacks us once he recovers instead of waiting 6 months, we should not be surprised. I want everyone to gather here tomorrow. We'll enter the Q training tower together. Taro, I want you to follow me to my living quarters. I have some questions I need to ask you. Xavier, Sonny, Hao, and Layla were seated on chairs in the hall in their living quarters. Taro, a new student who helped Xavier, was sitting next to them. Xavier looked at him. I wanted to ask you a few things. First of all, what do you know of the White Gang? Taro thought for a moment before he replied. I know that the leader of the White Gang is called Bai Feng. He's the older cousin of Tai. They say he's a level 6 battle spirit. He has quite the reputation in the academy, since he's also on the ranking within the inner circle. The top 50 ranking. What's his rank? Xavier questioned. Right now? I don't know. The last time I heard something, he was on 34. Keep in mind that the ranking is constantly changing, so perhaps he's somewhere higher by now. Taro replied honestly. He really knew a lot more about the inner circle than Xavier expected. Xavier wrapped his hands around the hot teacup in front of him. A faint smile was on his face. I see. Thank you for your help. I'm glad to know someone who knows his way around. It would be difficult without an insider. Do you know anything about the other members of the White Gang? Aside from Bai Fang, they have 3 more battle spirits. They do most of the fighting. One of them is Fen, the guy you have fought against today. They're all level 3 battle spirits. I'm not really sure about the strength of the other members. I think 13 of them are She Masters. They have around 30 members, or I think even 35. The rest of the group must consist of true masters. After Taro explained, Xavier took a sip of tea and thought for a minute. 4 battle spirits, 13 She Masters, and a bunch of true masters. That is bad. Taro nodded. It is. Well, they're not considered a super powerful faction. I can't think of many people who would want to provoke them. It's weird that they hate us so much. A faction with their strength would usually not go all out because of a bunch of new students. I'm pretty sure we have Tai to blame for that. Xavier nodded and bit his lips. I thought as much. Tai already held a grudge against me. What happened during the fire energy hunting competition was really the last straw. Anyway, enough of that. I want you to show up tomorrow at the place we agreed on. Then we'll enter the Q training tower together. We need to raise our strength as quickly as possible. Does everyone have enough fire energy to enter the tower? Taro smiled. Thanks to you, we all have enough fire energy to train for about a month. Good. I hope there won't be any more trouble that could interrupt our plans. I have enough going on right now, Xavier shared. At the same time, the White Gang also held a meeting. There were more than 10 people in their well-lit room. Some of them sat on chairs. Others leaned against the wall. Boss, that Steel Gate faction needs to learn a lesson. Can't believe they beat up Fen. We need to avenge him. Otherwise, our reputation is ruined. One of the men in the room complained and smashed his fist on the table in front of him. Most of the other people agreed. He's right, boss. We can't allow them to get away. Their boss, Bai Fang, was leaning against the back of his armchair. He rubbed his chin. Something about his appearance was similar to Tai. It was obvious that they were related. He glanced to his left side. On his left side stood Fen, who was badly injured after his fight against Xavier earlier. Only half of his face was visible. The other half was wrapped in bandages. Fen, how badly are you injured? Bai Fang asked his underling. He did not sound concerned. Everyone turned to look at Fen and waited for his answer. It's not bad. It'll take me at most 5 days until I'm fully recovered, replied Fen. Good. What level was their leader on? Bai Fang raised an eyebrow. The visible parts of Fen's face turned red. He looked away as he replied with embarrassment. Xavier's strength is around that of a level 5, or perhaps level 6 She-Master. I know how this sounds, but there's something about him that makes him a lot stronger. While he was fighting me, he used some secret technique to raise his strength to the one of a battle spirit. This, in combination with his Sound D technique, is why I lost so badly. I didn't know that he had a Sound D technique, so I had no chance to react. I couldn't even defend myself as he hit me. Bai Fang turned to his right side and looked at his cousin Tai to get a confirmation of Fen's story. What Fen says is true. Xavier does have a Sound D technique and some other powerful tricks. I tried to warn him about this, but Fen didn't want to listen. I should also mention that Xavier has another scary D technique, though I'm not sure if it's a D technique. It's some sort of special attack. It was super weird. He used it against Shiro during the fire energy hunting competition. He summoned a green flame and a purple flame. As he moved them together, it caused a gigantic explosion. He didn't use this special attack today, so I think it costs him too much Q energy. I think he can only use this special attack when he's in top form. Bai Fang nodded. Yeah, I've heard of the explosion he made. It's no wonder it's too exhausting for him. Fen took a step closer to Bai Fang. Boss, I was at a disadvantage because I didn't know all of his tricks. If I fight him again, I swear I'll kick his ass. Bai Fang's face turned dark. Not even a second later, he jumped up from his seat and in front of Fang. You damned idiot! Do you think you haven't embarrassed me enough yet? Remember what you promised the Steelgate faction. You arrogant idiot thought it would be a good idea to boast. You promised that we would leave them alone for 6 months if Xavier defeats you. And now, what happened during the fight? Fen's entire body sank as Bai Fang was breathing down his neck. His face turned pale. He defeated me. Which means, Bai Fang yelled, we have to leave them alone for 6 months. Fen answered with a bad feeling spreading through his stomach. Bai Fang nodded and smacked Fen's visible cheek with his open palm. Yes, exactly, you idiot. Everyone in the inner circle is talking about what happened today. By tomorrow, every single student will know what happened during the fight and what you promised the Steelgate faction. If we go after Xavier and the Steelgate faction, we will lose all of the reputation that we have built up. No one is going to respect us or believe anything we say. You gave your word, and you need to keep it. Or do you want to get me into more trouble? Ben hurriedly shook his head. No, of course not, boss. But then what should we do, Bai Fang? We can't let them get away with this, can we? If we act like nothing happened, we would also lose a lot of our reputation. Tai was worried. Bai Fang did not care. He took a sip of tea from a teacup that stood on the table in front of him, and was quiet for a minute before replying to Tai. No one said anything about letting them get away with this. We promised to leave them alone for 6 months, not longer. All we need to do is keep our word. But they will train and get stronger. We can't wait 6 months, Tai expressed. Bai Fang snorted. Get stronger? Tai, they're new students. Sure, they might get stronger, but I don't expect all of them to become battle spirits in 6 months. You said most of them are true masters, with the exception of Xavier, Hao, Layla, and Sunny, right? If that's true, then we don't have to worry. Some of them might level up to become she-masters, and some of the leaders might level up to become battle spirits. However, a few she-masters are nothing we couldn't deal with, and the leap to become a battle spirit is difficult. I don't think all of their leaders can make this leap easily in 6 months' time. I'm sure it will be fine. Once the 6 months are over, I will personally issue a challenge against the Steelgate faction. This did nothing to ease Tai's anxiety. He tried his best to talk his cousin out of it. Isn't that too risky? We don't know what sort of events could happen in half a year. Maybe they gain some new members, or maybe they'll level up faster than expected. Xavier is unpredictable. I don't know how fast he'll level up in 6 months. Calm down, Tai. Even if Xavier and his entire Steelgate faction trained in the Q training tower every day, the new students would not come too far. At most, they'll become she-masters. I already told you that it's not easy to make the jump to become a battle spirit. Besides, I'm not an idiot like Fen. I won't make any foolish promises to boast. Once I face them, I'll fight alongside the entire White Gang, instead of challenging him one-on-one. Once Bai Fang finished talking, he gave his group a few orders and headed out. It was getting dark outside. Meanwhile, Xavier was training in his room. He wanted to be prepared to enter the Q training tower the next day. On the early next morning, Xavier woke up with the first rays of sunlight that shone through his window. He took a shower, ate something, and walked out of the house, where he was greeted by Sunny, Layla, and Hao. They smiled as they saw him, and together made their way to the place where they met up with the other new students. As Xavier and his group arrived, all the new students were already waiting. Many of them arrived way earlier than they were supposed to. They could not wait to finally enter the Q training tower. They beamed with joy and excitement. Xavier did not bother to waste their time. Without saying anything, he took the lead, and almost 50 students followed him. On the road to the Q training tower, they encountered many older students. They were shocked to see Xavier and his large group of people, and they gossiped. Wait, that is Xavier, right? I've heard about him and his fight with Fen yesterday. Yeah, I heard it too. I couldn't believe it. You couldn't believe it? Xavier was also the new student who almost killed Shiro. I wasn't surprised as I heard that Xavier defeated Fen. Honestly, I expected Xavier to look scarier. He is quite handsome, though. I don't know, but man, those 2 girls next to him sure are hot. I wonder if one of them is single. One of the older students grinned, and the woman next to him rolled her eyes. Even if they would be, I don't think they'd be interested in you. They must also be members of the new faction Xavier made. What were they called again? Oh, I think they were called the Steelgate faction. Another woman answered. A friend of mine told me. He watched the fight between Xavier and Fen. He told me that Fen got knocked out with 1 hit. Can you believe that? He also said for a moment they were worried Fen was dead. Dead? I don't think Xavier could kill someone with only 1 hit, but he does appear to be strong. The other new students seem to have a lot of potential too. Xavier overheard the various conversations around him. While he was silently laughing, this did not show up on his face. His expression was cold and focused. Everyone, we should hurry up. We want to get a good room. Xavier turned around and urged the new students to speed up. Once they saw Xavier running, they ran after him. After running for nearly an hour, the imposing top of the Q training tower finally appeared on the horizon. Xavier, is that the Q training tower? I had no idea there was only the top visible. How deep does it go into the ground? Sonny stopped next to Xavier as they reached the tower. Xavier shrugged. I have no idea. All I can tell you is that it goes very, very deep. Xavier did not elaborate on this. Instead, he led the new students to the entrance and waited until the Q training tower would open. While they were waiting, more and more students arrived. They queued up behind Xavier and his group. The new students were surprised to see how many students arrived within the next hour. The more people arrived, the more tense the atmosphere got. The students behind Xavier's group pushed and cursed each other loudly. Luckily, they didn't bother to annoy the new students. Everyone had heard of Xavier's fight against Fen. None of the older students behind Xavier's group wanted to upset him. Xavier was very glad about this. He was not in the mood for another fight. Suddenly, Taro squeezed himself through the crowd of new students. Their space was getting smaller and smaller. Chief Xavier, we need to be careful. Xavier turned around and furrowed his brows. Careful? Why? Did you see something? Taro nodded. He looked anxious about something. There's someone who could cause us some problems. We need to keep our guard up. Xavier was about to ask for more information, but before he could do so, he saw it himself. The crowd of older students behind his group dispersed. They made way for a few people who were headed to the Q training tower. The older students wanted to complain, but as they saw who it was that cut in line, they quickly shut their mouths and stepped back. Xavier's face turned dark. The new students around him stopped chatting and laughing. They turned around, and their smiles dropped. Instantly, the joyous and hopeful atmosphere was gone. It was Bai Fang. They turned silent as Xavier and the new students saw Bai Fang coming closer. Are they going to challenge us? A bad feeling of anxiety overcame the new students. Although Fen promised that the white group would leave the Steelgate faction alone after Xavier defeated him, the new students didn't know if they would be true to their word. Xavier also kept his guard up. His expression was cold as Bai Fang and his group approached. Bai Fang walked to Xavier. Tension was in the air. No one dared to break the silence. This tense silence lasted only for a moment. Suddenly, Bai Fang laughed. So you are Xavier, right? I've heard much about you. He stretched out his hand. Xavier could see darkness in Bai Fang's eyes. Despite this, Xavier also laughed and shook Bai Fang's hand. Yeah, I heard a lot about you too. As they shook hands, their faked smiles dropped. The tension grew. Some of the onlookers gasped and took a step back. Q energy appeared and wrapped around Bai Fang's hand, which still held Xavier's. His grip tightened. Xavier did not let this intimidate him. Not wanting to be insulted, Xavier moved a spark of his own Q energy from his Q Cyclone forth and moved it toward his hand. Bai Fang seemed to have sensed something. He put his fake smile back on and was about to pull his hand back. As he did so, he moved a fingernail along Xavier's palm. A brief pain shot through Xavier's hand, causing a numb feeling. However, Xavier's face remained indifferent. His eyes were cold as he glanced at Bai Fang. What Bai Fang did not notice was how a spark of green energy from Xavier attached to his fingernail. Explode, Xavier murmured as silently as possible. Suddenly, the wisp of energy from Xavier that attached to Bai Fang's finger exploded. It burst into a wave of green fire that wrapped around Bai Fang's hand. With panic on his face, Bai Fang shook his hand to get rid of the fire. The surrounding students were confused. Bai Fang, what are you doing? The fire disappeared as quickly as it came. None of the students knew what happened. They did not see the secret attacks Xavier and Bai Fang exchanged. All they saw was Bai Fang raise his Q energy, and Xavier caused a wave of fire. Hao and Layla took a step forward. Their faces were gloomy. They understood that if this situation would escalate, they needed to be prepared. Bai Fang straightened his sleeves and laughed. Why are you acting so paranoid? Do you think I'm going to start a fight? Ben told me about the promise he made. I'm not a liar. I promise I'll be true to my word. He threw a menacing look toward Xavier. Naturally, Xavier understood. He knew that Bai Fang only did this to keep his reputation. If it were not for that, he would attack Xavier instantly. Xavier raised his hand. Hao and Layla took a step back. They knew they could not afford to be impulsive. While Bai Fang promised to not attack them for 6 months, he was allowed to defend himself. If Xavier and the others attack the White Gang, the situation will escalate. And as of now, the Steelgate faction had no chance in a fight against the White Gang. Xavier knew this as much as everyone else that was present. Xavier also immediately realized that Bai Fang was not as much of a hot-headed fool as his underling Fang. Judging by the way Bai Fang acted, he must have also been a lot more collected and cunning than Tai. He had to be cautious. Xavier felt how his hand was still numb. Whatever sort of sneaky attack Bai Fang used, it was not weak. Silently, Xavier cursed him. Suddenly, an idea formed in Xavier's mind. He raised his head and looked over to Tai, who stood near Bai Fang. Tai, you were not exaggerating as you talked about Bai Fang's strength. He really is a master, especially in sneaky attacks that bystanders won't see. Hopefully he can show me some more of those hidden attacks in the future. He turned back to Bai Fang and smiled. Bai Fang gritted his teeth as he saw Xavier's smile. I will gladly show you more once the 6 months are over. We will challenge you and your Steelgate faction. Afterward, there won't be anything left of it. No matter how much potential or power you have, we'll defeat your cheap faction. A bright golden flash appeared in Sunny's eyes for a brief moment. Bloodlust was in them. Hao took a step forward. Xavier had to hold him back. Don't. We'll deal with them in 6 months. We can't defeat them right now. Suddenly, a clear female voice appeared in the crowd. Bai Fang, are you so bored that you pick fights with new students? Isn't that beneath you? The voice belonged to Miss Yu, whom Xavier met yesterday in the Q training tower. Just like yesterday, she was dressed in a silver dress. Her hair was put up with a crescent-shaped silver hairpin that glowed in a mysterious cold light. Above her chest was a badge with a moon. Behind her were a few young men who were dressed in similar outfits and wore the same badges. They must have been members of her faction. Ugh, you! What are you doing here again? Weren't you here yesterday? Bai Fang was clearly annoyed to see the young woman. I'm standing up for the new students, obviously. Why don't you go and harass someone that's on your level? Are you scared of facing an actual opponent? There was not the slightest hint of fear on Yu's face. Bai Fang grew irritated. He wanted to say something, but knew he could not afford a fight with Yu and her faction. Instead, he threw one last look at Xavier. Let's see if you are brave enough to accept my challenge in 6 months, or if you will hide behind another woman. Without waiting for any reply, Bai Fang stomped into the Q training tower, which finally opened. Tai and his other men followed close behind. Some of the older students looked disappointed as Bai Fang and his group left. They were hoping to see a fight. Yu walked to Xavier. How did you get into trouble already? You should keep a low profile. Picking fights with your new faction is not a good idea. Xavier could not hold back his laughter as he heard this. Yeah, trust me, I know that. I wasn't picking any fight. These older students won't leave us alone. Yesterday, Ben showed up and challenged me to a fight. I guess he's a sore loser, and has now got the other members of the White Gang involved. Thank you for standing up for us, by the way. If we can help you in the future, let us know. Yu sighed and shook her head. We can talk about this later. Let's enter the tower first. Xavier nodded. He walked to the tower and introduced Sunny, Hao, and Layla to Yu as they all entered. The crowd behind them pushed and cursed each other. Everyone was eager to get inside as quickly as possible to get a good training room. Xavier had the advantage of being followed by a large group, so he was not pushed too much and could keep talking with Yu and the others. Once inside, Yu reminded Xavier to pay more attention to the White Gang and walked away. The group of young women followed her closely. When she was gone, Xavier looked at the new students behind him. Xavier already warned all of them about the invisible flame and gave them advice on how to deal with it if they encounter it. Thanks to this, it did not take the new students long to get rid of the flame that entered their bodies. Sunny was the first one who refined all of the energy of the flame. It did not even take her 2 minutes to do so, much to Xavier's surprise. After that, Layla finished refining the energy of the flame. Shortly after, Hao followed. Their faces were glowing. It was clear that the newfound Q energy had a lot of benefits. Sunny was surprised. No wonder the new students that train here level up a lot faster. Layla agreed. It's amazing. If I train here, then I can become a battle spirit this year. I'm really looking forward to it. They followed Xavier deeper into the tower. They took a few turns and were suddenly stopped by a middle-aged man. He wore a dark robe, and on his chest was a badge that indicated he was a teacher of sorts. Xavier did not recognize him. Is something wrong? The other new students behind Xavier tensed up and stopped chatting with each other. The middle-aged man who stopped Xavier and the group of new students following him smiled. No, there's nothing wrong. I only wanted to ask for your name. My name is Xavier, Xavier Shao. The new students behind me are all members of my faction, the Steelgate faction. We're here for our first training session. Xavier explained and gestured at the almost 50 new students following him who made up his Steelgate faction. The middle-aged man nodded. I see. I was hoping it was you. Elder Fang told me that you might arrive and to keep an eye out. He instructed me to lead you to the special middle-level room. Xavier remembered what Elder Fang had told him. The elder mentioned that some of the training rooms were better than the others of the same level. Xavier quickly nodded and thanked the man. He waved toward the Steelgate faction, and they followed Xavier. After a few minutes, they paused outside an old door. Compared to the other doors, it looked a lot worse. There were numerous cracks on it, and it threatened to fall apart. Xavier and the others were speechless. The middle-aged man who led them here laughed. Yes, I know it looks bad, but don't worry. As the door opened, a faint cold air came out. Xavier hesitated for a moment before entering. Once he did, the others followed. The inside of the room was quite large. In the middle was a large black platform. It was about 3 inches high. On the platform stood a large black rock. The middle-aged man pointed at the platform with the rock and explained, This is the training area. There's enough space for all of you. Do you see the lines on the ground? They mark the training spots. In front of each spot is a notch where you can place the fire crystal card. Once you place it there, the invisible flames you've already encountered as you entered the tower will appear. We call them heart flames. You can use them to refine your Q energy, toughen your Q pathways, and strengthen your bones. They provide a lot of benefits. I'm sure you can figure out how to make the best use of them on your own. After he explained, the Steelgate faction spread out and checked out the training room. They inspected the rock on the platform carefully. The middle-aged man waited until the excitement died down before he continued to talk. Since this is your first day in the Q training tower, I need to mention the rules. Please make sure to keep them in mind during your stay. First, and most importantly, this room is for training only. You're not allowed to sleep, eat, or live here. Keep track of the time, and make sure to get out to eat or sleep. For now, it would be best if you train only for half a day at a time. The energy of the flame is very powerful and beneficial for you, but it is also very wild. If you train all day, it will exhaust you after a while. If you've been training for a while, you'll get used to this wild energy, but this is a slow process. Those of you who are stronger will naturally endure the energy for longer. Once you're a battle spirit, you can train for 4 or 5 days in the tower without worrying about sleep or food. However, please take one step at a time. For now, you should not overdo it, or you will get yourself hurt. Once the man saw that all the students nodded, he continued. All right, the first results are always the best ones, so make the most of your stay. Many new students advance a level during their first time training here. I wish you all the best, and hope you all can also advance a level. Good luck. With this, he took a polite bow, turned around, and wanted to walk out of the room. Xavier quickly followed him and stopped him right before the door. Master, please wait a moment. I want to thank you for your help. Xavier brushed over his storage ring, and a small crystal bottle with 1 pill inside appeared in his hand. He handed it to the man. This is a pill that can calm down someone's mind and has some healing benefits. It's not too valuable, but I hope it helps. The eyes of the middle-aged man lit up. Xavier's definition of not too valuable was a bit odd. While the middle-aged man was no alchemist, he could tell that this pill was definitely worth more than 10,000 gold coins. He took the small bottle with a smile and bowed in front of Xavier. Thank you, Xavier. I really appreciate it. I'm in charge of this area, so I'll make sure none of you will get bothered. Thank you, Master, Xavier replied. Oh, please call me Ling. The man replied with a laugh. All right, thank you, Ling. Xavier smiled. Ling waved it off. Don't mention it. I hope you enjoy your time in the training tower. Let me know if you need anything. He walked through the door and closed it behind him. Xavier turned around and went to Sunny, Layla, and Hao. They all inspected the black stone and the platform. Xavier joined them. As he touched the black stone, he was surprised that it was warm, almost hot, to the touch. Under this strange warmth, his Q energy got excited and moved faster through his body. This is really weird. Let's see if this will help us to level up in our first training session. Xavier unsheathed the broadsword ruler from his back and threw it inside his storage ring. Under this strange warmth, his Q energy got excited and moved faster through his body. This is really weird. Let's see if this will help us to level up in our first training session. Xavier unsheathed the broadsword ruler from his back and threw it inside his storage ring. He then sat down on the platform at a spot to the left. The other students also looked for a spot to sit down. Xavier flicked his fingers, and his fire crystal card appeared in his hands. He placed it gently inside the notch in front of him. A creaking sound came from the card, and a beam of light appeared for a brief second. Moments later, the fire energy on the card was reduced by 1. Xavier crossed his legs and closed his eyes. His hands formed seals, like the ones monks make while meditating, and he activated his inner vision. The private conversations between the students stopped. Inside the training room, it was deadly silent. The hot Q energy in the air spread further and further. Students with a fire elemental attribute felt that the effects were very powerful. This included Xavier. Suddenly, he could feel a wisp of an almost invisible flame appear inside his body. It flickered brightly close to his heart. Xavier focused his inner vision on this wisp of flame. He noticed that this wisp was a lot stronger than the one he encountered yesterday. Perhaps this was because this training room was further down in the tower. Xavier's Q pathways began to ache with a burning pain. However, this time, he did not make the mistake he did yesterday when he tried to isolate the translucent flame with the green heavenly flame. Instead, he endured the hot pain. He knew that this would lead to the most benefits. The wisp of the flame soared happily. The temperature increased every second. Xavier's body soon felt like an oven. In this oven, he refined more and more of his Q energy. Sometimes, the Q pathways twitched. Fortunately, it was not bad enough for them to break. After 10 minutes, Xavier moved his inner vision deeper into his body. From the Q crystal within his Q cyclone, waves of Q energy appeared. They drove through Xavier's body like a wild river. It moved further and further toward the translucent flame near his heart. Xavier guided it through the flame. Once it passed, the flame turned hotter. The Q energy that passed through acted like boiling water inside the flame. It was bubbling and smoking. This did not last for very long. Immediately, as it exited the flame, it shrunk in size and cooled down. Now, it was a lot purer than before. The glow of the Q crystal increased as Xavier finished the first round of refinement. His heart leapt with joy. No wonder everything within the inner circle is kept under wraps. The elders insisted that we do not tell anyone what is going on in the inner circle, and now I can see why. If word spread that there's a mysterious tower that helps people to speed up their training process, the inner circle would be overrun with people from the entire continent. Xavier continued to refine round after round. If things continued this way, he would reach the next level soon. However, Xavier was not the only one who benefited from this training. The other students in the room were beaming with excitement. Time moved quickly. No one noticed how much time had passed. They were driven by ambition and wanted to continue to train as much as possible. Faint white fog rose from their bodies. Occasionally, this fog around a student began to tremble, and their Q energy became stronger. This was a clear sign that they reached the next level. Most of those who advanced to the next level were those who were still true masters. Those of a higher level, like Xavier and Sunny, did not advance as much. After all, the higher someone's level is, the more effort and Q energy it would take to level up. Time passed by quicker than they realized. They didn't know how much time had passed, as suddenly, a loud bell sounded throughout the entire room. All the students opened their eyes. Light flashed through them. The Q energy in the room rose drastically. Xavier took a deep breath and stretched himself. He could hear the cracking of his joints. He looked at the other students. Some of them looked more exhausted than before. Instructor Ling was not lying. If you're going over your limits, the backlash will be bad. The energy of the flame is really wild. They need to be careful. If they keep crossing their own limits, they'll end up damaging their bodies and won't recover anytime soon, he thought. He turned around as Sunny, who was sitting next to him, placed a hand on his shoulder. Xavier, are you all right? How was your training? Xavier smiled. It went well, thank you. How about you? You don't look tired at all. So I guess it also went well. Sunny nodded. Meanwhile, Hao and Layla had a faint red tiredness in their eyes. Apparently, they were not completely unaffected by the wild energy of the flame. Xavier pulled the fire crystal card from the notch in front of him and looked at the reflection of his face on it. There was not the slightest hint of red in his eyes. He quickly put the card back inside his storage ring. Lao's voice suddenly appeared in his mind. With the Green Lotus Heavenly Flame protecting you, you don't need to be afraid. Although your current Heavenly Flame is not as powerful as the Fallen Heart Heavenly Flame, it's a lot more powerful than any of these small wisps that come from the Fallen Heart Heavenly Flame. As for your girlfriend, I'm not sure why she is unaffected. Perhaps she has some sort of protective amulet that keeps her safe. As Lao referred to Sunny as Xavier's girlfriend, a red blush flashed over Xavier's face. His heart jumped. Silently, he replied to Lao, If that's the case, I can keep training without being worried about any backlash? It is. As long as you can endure the pain, you can keep going for as long as you want, Lao carefully replied. Xavier grinned as Lao said this. That's great news. I've gone through a lot worse for the sake of training. This bit of heat is nothing. I guess that means I can train a lot more than I thought, which also means I can train longer than the other students without any damage. I hope this means I'll get faster results as well. I need to level up as fast as possible. Master Lao, do you think if I reach the level of a battle spirit I can devour the Fallen Heart Heavenly Flame without too many problems? Master Lao snorted. You're very optimistic. Not too many problems could mean anything, but the chance of you dying is definitely lower when you're a battle spirit, if that's what you need to hear. Xavier was glad about this. He and Sunny stood up, and Xavier told her about some of his plans. Sunny paid close attention. Once Xavier was done, she placed a hand on Xavier's cheek. You can trust me, Layla and Hao. We'll take care of the Steelgate faction while you focus on your training. Xavier lowered his head and stared deeply into Sunny's eyes. The beating of his calm heart sped up. Silently, Xavier marveled at Sunny's beauty and how lucky he was to have her as his girlfriend. Xavier walked out of the training room in the Q training tower. In the hallway, it was extremely busy. People were rushing back and forth. All the doors that were closed as they entered were now open. Students entered and exited the rooms. Many of the students had a faint red glow in their eyes. Xavier paused for a moment as he stood outside the training room. He took a deep breath and squeezed himself through the flood of people to walk toward the middle of the tower. He knew that there was a tunnel to go down to the next level. If he wanted to get better results, Xavier knew he had to go deeper into the tower. He pushed himself through the crowd. Gradually, the people dispersed. It did not take Xavier too long to reach the entrance of the tunnel that led deeper down into the tower. To Xavier's surprise, there were no people near the tunnel. He was confused for a moment, but did not want to waste any time, so he took a step inside the tunnel. Suddenly, he could feel someone grab his shoulders. Young man, where do you think you're going? Did you not hear the bell ringing? It is forbidden to run around in the halls after the bell rang. Xavier was startled and jumped around. In front of him was a middle-aged man. He wore a dark robe and had the same badge on his chest that Instructor Ling wore. Xavier was about to defend himself, but the instructor waved his hand. Don't bother starting an argument. Go back and rest. If you're overdoing it, the effect of the hidden fire poison will damage your body. Hidden fire poison, Xavier thought. As the instructor saw how confused Xavier was, he let out a sigh. Do they not tell you anything when you enter the tower? The hidden fire poison is caused if your Q energy is exposed to the flame for too long. It damages your body if you train for too long. It can damage your Q pathways and, in very bad cases, also your organs and bones. You should recover before continuing your training." Xavier was about to object as he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Xavier, what are you still doing here?" Xavier sighed in relief. "Ling, it's good to see you again." Ling walked up to Xavier and looked at him and then at the middle-aged man next to him. Ling immediately understood the situation. He turned to his colleague and laughed. "I see. I've met this young man earlier. Let me handle this, and you go back to your work. I'll take care of everything." Ling did not have to say this twice. The other man nodded, and although he had a look of doubt on his face, he didn't ask any questions, and instead walked away. Once he was out of sight, Ling turned to Xavier. "Xavier, what are you still doing here? Your first training session should be over, right?" "Yes, it is. I wanted to ask you to help me with something. Look, with my current strength, I don't really get any good results from training on the first level. I was hoping to go down a few levels to get some better results," Xavier explained. Ling was taken aback as Xavier said this. He immediately shook his head. "Xavier, I know that training on the first level won't show the same results for someone of your level as for someone weaker, but I don't think this is a good idea. Besides, according to the rules, all of the new students must train on the first level for 1 week before they're allowed to go any deeper." Xavier furrowed his brows. "I don't think you mentioned this as you explained the rules." Ling paused for a moment. He silently thought, and embarrassment appeared on his face. "I guess you're right. I totally forgot about this. I'm sorry. Anyway, I can't allow it. Even with your strength, training in the tower for too long will be dangerous. The hidden fire poison can cause a lot of damage. You shouldn't underestimate it. During my years in the inner circle, I've seen many students who suffered bad injuries because of it. Many of these students were very strong. Some were even on your level. I'm not saying you're overestimating your abilities, but you think I'm overestimating my abilities." Xavier finished Ling's sentence deadpan. "Look, Ling, I usually don't like to bring it up, but I think I have to. Otherwise, you won't understand why I insist on going deeper. You see, I have a special Q method. It's not really strong, but it has a unique ability. I can resist many flames due to this ability, so I'm not overly worried about the hidden fire poison damaging my body. Besides, I'm not going to enter the 3rd or the 4th level. I would just like to train in the 2nd level, that's all." Xavier did not bother to mention the green heavenly flame that protected him. He had a feeling if he would start to explain this, it would take ages to explain all the details, and perhaps Ling would get curious and ask how Xavier obtained a heavenly flame, which was a topic Xavier wanted to avoid talking about. Ling stared at Xavier with astonishment. After working in the inner circle for many years, he had a lot of knowledge about the hidden fire poison. Due to this, he was able to see the signs of someone being affected by it. However, he saw none of the signs in Xavier whatsoever. "I believe you, Xavier. You don't seem to show any signs of being exhausted or being affected by the hidden fire poison. However, it's still against the rules. I can't allow it. If I would lead you down and someone sees me, I could get into a lot of trouble," Ling informed. Xavier sighed. He knew what this meant. He brushed over his storage ring, and another crystal bottle came forth. Xavier waved it under Ling's nose. "You see this pill? It can help to suppress the effects of the fire poison. I imagine the fire poison also takes its toll on you after spending so much time in the Q training tower. Or not." Ling's heart pounded as Xavier shoved the small crystal bottle into his hand. He looked at it with greedy eyes. Xavier had a good point. Ling frequently had to work in this tower. After many years, this did take its toll on his body. Additionally, instructors of his rank could not leave the tower and get rest to recover whenever they wanted. They had to follow their schedule. If their superiors would hear that they would leave the tower to take a break, they would lose their jobs. Ling looked to the right and to the left and stored the small bottle away. He looked at Xavier with a serious expression. "All right, I can't say no to a pill like this. I'll lead you downstairs, but only today. I don't want to get fired because of you." He looked to the right and the left again, and then pushed Xavier down to the tunnel. The tunnel was going deeper like a spiral. After a minute or so, Ling took the lead and sprinted faster. He must have been really nervous about being seen here. They went down for about 5 more minutes, deeper and deeper into the tower, before Ling stopped. In front of him was a tall door. This is the entrance to the next level. You're lucky that I'm responsible for guarding the door today. If anyone else would be here, I couldn't have led you here. Be careful. There's a Q energy barrier in front of the door. You don't want to touch it unless you want to spend the next few weeks bedbound. Xavier immediately jumped a step back. Ling waved his hands, and in a moment, the Q energy barrier disappeared. Is it done? Can I go in? Xavier asked. Ling nodded. Yes, the barrier has been removed. Once you enter, I'll continue to stand guard. The door will be opened again tomorrow morning, once the Q training tower opens its gate again. Xavier took a grateful bow in front of Ling. Thank you, Ling. I really appreciate your help. Without wasting more time, he hurried through the door. Behind the door was another set of stairs. He heard Ling's voice call after him. Make sure to find a place to rest outside the training room if the heart flame is hurting you too much. Once the tower opens again, make sure to be ready to leave. I don't want anyone to see you here. I understand. Don't worry. Xavier called back and walked deeper into the tower without looking back. Ling sighed. I really hope he knows what he is doing. The heart flame is a lot more dangerous on the second floor. If he gets injured, then... Oh, I don't even want to think about how much trouble I would be in. The staircase that led to the second level of the Q training tower was a lot longer than Xavier expected. He had to walk for at least 5 minutes before he reached the ground. Once he arrived, he looked around. The second level did not look very different from the first one, although it was a bit more spacious and there were fewer people. The people who were present seemed a bit confused as Xavier arrived. Luckily, they did not care enough to ask any questions. They gave him some weird looks and moved on. Some whispered to each other, wondering why this student was allowed to walk down after the bell rang. Xavier was not too concerned about them. He strolled through the second level, checking out the area. Something he noticed very quickly was that the air was a lot hotter than on the first level. It does make sense that the deeper down you go, the hotter it gets. The last level must be unbearable. I wonder who goes there. Xavier took in a deep breath of the hot air. He could feel his body tingle. To his left side, he saw some low-level training rooms, but they did not interest Xavier. He kept walking further. After a while, he arrived at the middle-level training rooms. He paused in front of one of them. That room appears to be empty, but maybe I should keep looking around. I want to see if the bottomless pit in the middle is any different on the second level. Since the bottomless pit was in the exact middle of the tower, Xavier had to pass the high-level training rooms to get there. They appeared undoubtedly much better than the ones above. They were also not as many. Xavier counted them. There were only 18 high-level training rooms. Close to them stood a few people. Xavier could see from the badges on their chests that they were instructors. Since Xavier did not want to explain what he was doing here, he decided to turn around and head back to the middle-level training rooms. I wonder why there are so many instructors. Are they protecting something? They looked cautious. Something must be going on. Xavier silently wondered what this could be about and stopped in front of a small middle-level training room. On the door was a tag showing that one spot was remaining in the training room. He carefully looked to the left and to the right and opened the door as slowly as possible to not make any noise. Warm light was inside the training room. In the middle of the room was a familiar platform. However, it was much smaller. It only offered enough space for 5 people to sit on. 4 of the spaces were already taken. Despite Xavier's best efforts, the sound of the door closing could be heard in the training room. Since it was deadly silent up until this moment, it sounded a lot louder than it was. Xavier flinched together at the noise. The 4 students who were busy training opened their eyes. Sorry, Xavier murmured, and hurried to the empty spot on the platform. The other students sighed in relief as they saw Xavier. They were worried some faction would show up and try to steal their spots. Xavier took a good look at them. All of them are She Masters, but not on a high level. They don't wear any badge, so I guess they don't belong to any faction. Xavier pulled out his fire crystal card and inserted it into the slit in front of his seat. As the other students saw his fire crystal card, they gasped. A green fire crystal card? Jealousy was written all over them. They looked at the card with yearning. Xavier rolled his eyes. Once he soared his Q energy, the other students stopped staring at him. Realizing how powerful Xavier was scared them off. None of them wanted to fight against him. They knew they would have no chance. A bright beam of light shot from the green fire crystal card. As Xavier checked it, he saw that 2 days' worth of fire energy had been removed. He furrowed his brows. 2 days? So the deeper you go in the tower, the more you have to pay? That's really harsh. He helplessly shook his head and closed his eyes to enter his training mode. Meanwhile, more than 10 elders held a meeting in a large hall not too far away from Xavier. They all looked worried about something. The atmosphere in the room was heavy. On the leader's chair was the oldest amongst them. His face was concealed by a hood. As he spoke, the others could only see his mouth. It is getting more unstable with every passing day. I keep observing it to make sure to detect any difference in its behavior. Something I have noticed is that the Q energy fluctuations around it are a lot more intense and sporadic. It seems to be irritated. From the looks of it, I am afraid that within a few years, it will erupt. We need to be prepared. What if we reinforce the defenses again? We could double the barrier to strengthen it. Hopefully this will help. One of the elders suggested. The old man in the leader's chair tapped with his bony fingers against the armrest. Yes, we should do this, but I am afraid this will only delay the eruption. It won't do anything to prevent it. Another elder spoke up. Then perhaps we should inform the deputy headmaster in the outer circle and the headmaster of the inner circle. We need to do something. Additionally, we need to keep this under wraps. If those criminals in the black zone hear that we have a heavenly flame, they might rush over and attempt to steal it. The old man in the leader's chair nodded his head slowly. Yes, unfortunately, I am not sure how to contact the headmasters. The headmaster of the inner circle is currently undergoing a retreat, and the deputy headmaster is most likely traveling or on some sort of mission. I haven't heard from him since he brought us the new students. Speaking of new students, how is the new student who is in possession of a heavenly flame doing? Is there any news on him? Elder Fang, you have met him if I remember correctly. Can you tell me anything about his current state? Elder Fang stood up to reply. I received news that he is currently training on the 2nd level. Although he is a new student, and therefore should not be allowed to do this, I believe it would be best to turn a blind eye to this. With his potential, it would be a shame to restrain him and his abilities. I have also heard that he mentioned his Q method provides him with some resistance to the hidden fire poison. Perhaps he was referring to his heavenly flame, but did not feel comfortable to share this information with us. The elder in the leader's chair nodded. A faint smile flashed across his face. The deep wrinkles around his mouth turned deeper. Good, good. That is great news. It is odd, isn't it, that a young man is in possession of a heavenly flame. Even I cannot help but envy him. The power such a flame beholds is truly astonishing. A heavenly flame is the only reason our academy is as renowned as it is. Everyone, if any of you encounter this young student with the heavenly flame, keep your manners in mind, and make him feel as welcome as you can. I urge you to be as helpful as possible. If the fallen heart flame decides to erupt in the future, perhaps this young man with his heavenly flame can help us. Help us? But he is so young. First Elder, do you really think he could help us if the fallen heart heavenly flame erupts? The other elders were concerned. The first elder in the leader's chair raised his hand, making the others shut up. I'm afraid we have no other choice. In my experience, the best way of dealing with a heavenly flame is with another heavenly flame. Unless you can find another one, or find a different way to deal with this situation, we need to make sure to stay on this young student's good side. Naturally, none of the elders could do this, so they had to accept their first elder's decision. Once everything was discussed, they stood up and left the room. The first elder was left behind. He remained seated for a few more minutes, looking over some documents on a table in front of him. After he read all of them, he let out a deep sigh. The situation is a lot worse than I would like to admit. If the others would know, then... He did not dare to finish the sentence. Instead, he stood up. The air around his body fluctuated. Seconds later, he vanished into thin air. The room was empty and looked as if it had been for years.